think quite a lot. It does draw a big crowd at weekends. It's always been quite popular.
And is it very much the heart of Camden, would you say?
I think so, yeah.
OK, Jackie Churchill, thanks very much indeed for your time this evening. Let's just continue to look at the pictures just from a short time ago from North London. The plumes of smoke going into the air there, that smoke being lit by the flames. Now, this from about an hour or so ago, just as it was starting to be brought under control, just after the time when they thought it was going to be perhaps spread even further than it did, but it still damaged a historic, culturally important part of London and taking the heart out of Camden in many ways, some people have said. Some comments through on a political front. The Conservative candidate for Mayor of London is Boris Johnson. He said in the last few minutes that only a few weeks ago he was talking to traders. He says he can't believe the pictures he's now seeing on the news. He says it'll come to a terrible blow to livelihoods and to the area generally. His thoughts are with the traders, local residents and the emergency services, who Boris Johnson says are, as usual, performing brilliantly under pressure. Just looking through for some comments from the Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, but he doesn't appear to have made any comments at this time, so just the ones from the Conservative candidate Boris Johnson. But as many people have been telling us, this is a culturally important part of town and a historically important part of London, and one which has been devastated by this fire tonight. Well, a very good evening and welcome to Sky News at 10. And our breaking news tonight, 100 firefighters have been tackling a huge blaze which broke out in part of North London, a part which was teeming with Saturday night drinkers. Local residents were ordered from their homes as flames reached 30 feet into the air. Streets have been cordoned off across the area, but there are no reports of any injuries at the moment. Now, let's show you the latest pictures. As we tell you, the fire broke out at about 7 o'clock this evening at Camden Market in the north of the capital. We know 20 fire engines have been used. 10 jets of water were used by those fire officers to try to bring the fire under control. Now, the Hawley Arms pub, which counts Amy Winehouse and Pete Doherty amongst its regulars, was also on fire. That has been brought under control in the last 20 minutes or so by firefighters. It does now seem to be out at the Hawley Arms, but the water and smoke damage there will be significant. Just a short time ago, I spoke to Nick Comery, the station manager for London Fire Brigade.
The immediate details are there's a large fire in the vicinity of Chalk Farm Road, Camden. Currently we have 20 fire engines here and some 100 firefighters are tackling the blaze with currently about 10 jets of water set up. Our key consideration is to stop the spread and to get the fire under control. We have no information at this time about any persons being involved, but we're working very hard to control this and to stop it spreading from where it is currently taking place.
Reports of explosions on the scene. It's thought there were gas canisters in that area. We know you have petrol stations within that vicinity as well. How much more difficult does that make the situation?
Well, the situation, as I say, we have 10 jets that are currently tackling the fire. It is early stages of the fire, and we're doing our very best to bring it under control.
What can you tell us about the structure of the buildings in that area? We know that the parts of Camden Lot Market are partly wooden structures. Is that making things more difficult, that you have to take all that into account?
Any fire of this size is a large undertaking to tackle. As I say, currently it is shops and market storage areas that are involved. And as I say, it's early days, but we have 100 firefighters here and 20 fire engines, and we're doing our level best to bring it under control.
So the London Fire Brigade saying it just a short time ago it was early days. It does seem that they've made significant progress. Let's talk to Sky's Sarah Merchant, who's in Camden for us tonight, and just tell us what the current state of play is, Sarah.
They certainly do seem to have made progress. From where I'm standing, you can hardly see the fire at all, just some smoke. But when I arrived, about 2 hours now, the whole sky was orange and black, filled with fire and thick black smoke and sparks flying. In fact, as I arrived, the fire seemed to be spreading. It was a very difficult fire for the 100 firefighters to fight. We heard that it may have started either in a residential building or in a shop, but it looked like it was working its way very quickly along a set of buildings and onto a railway line. It was moving very, very quickly indeed. And the police who were trying to cordon the area off seemed quite panicked by the speed that the fire was moving. They were keeping the cordon well back from the fire because they thought that it was moving so quickly it could have posed a danger to the hundreds of people that have come out onto the streets to watch. I spoke to one young man who was in a bar at Camden Lock. He was very close to where the fire started, and he said that he heard an explosion and then all the windows in the bar that he was sitting at smashed in, and everyone started screaming, running out. They thought that a bomb had gone off because it was just such a large explosion. He said he could feel the heat from the fire, and he just ran down the street. He ran down to Camden High Street, which is where I am now, and that's how far the cordon stretches back. And it really is a difficult battle, not just for the firefighters out here tonight, but also the police service, because the streets are packed. Camden is always busy at the weekends. On a Saturday night, a fine night like this, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people out on the street. No one wants to miss what has been a spectacular show, and also people are getting drunk, so they're trying to get through the cordon. It's been quite a difficult logistical battle for the police to keep people away, but even there they do seem to be winning that. Just as the fire is coming onto control, so too are the crowds. But I think that Sunday, which would normally be a very busy day for Camden Market, is when people will see the true extent of the damage. And one woman I was talking to earlier said that she was in tears at the thought of any of this unique historic area being damaged or destroyed.
Yeah, you say unique and historic, Sarah. Explain to us why this is historically and culturally such an important part of the country.
It's important for its music, it's important for its shopping. People come here all over the world, not just the country. Camden Market is famous across the world. It is just such a unique area of London. There's nothing like it. The small little stalls, the antique shops, and I think that's what was one of the main concerns, the nature of the businesses around here, the nature of the buildings. Certainly the fire had no problem spreading, ripping right through those at an incredible rate, and it really is sad for people to think that they may have lost something unique, although it is very difficult to say at this stage when it's still dark how bad the damage is. But already I imagine that there will be investigators on the scene trying to see if there's any early indication of exactly what happened. They've had various reports from people about canisters. They think that's what may have caused the explosions, but at the moment it's mostly conjecture. We're still waiting for an update from the fire service to see if they can give us any early indications of what might have caused this fire. OK, Sarah, stay with us just as we have a look at some of the pictures and photographs, footage of the fire that you've been sending us this evening. We appreciate your contributions to our output tonight. And in this view of pictures, smoke can be seen billowing from the buildings, clouding up the streets, which had been full of people out celebrating Saturday night in, as Sarah was saying, a very popular area. From this distance shot, you can see the scale of the blaze as it engulfs the buildings, and they really see the scale of it in that shot. And one viewer described just the moment he saw the fire break out.
I was actually standing on the bridge as it happened, and the heat on my face was so hot, so it was.
Well, the number of firefighters in attendance steadily increased during the evening. We know that at the peak of this, there are more than 100 firefighters involved, dozens of ambulances there. Some of the most recent footage we've had shown the fire in full force over North London. Look at that for a dramatic picture, just showing how ferocious that blaze was. And let's have a look at some of the video coming through, which again puts it all in some sort of perspective. And those flames, what, 20, 30 metres in the sky, just showing how ferocious, how fierce this blaze was at its peak. And no wonder there was so much concern for all the people in that area, and why there's such a large cordon was put in place, with the fears that this was going to continue to spread right across that area. As Sarah was saying, lots of old wooden buildings or partly wooden structured buildings in that area, and concern that the fire was just going to continue to spread across that area. Looking at some of the pictures from Camden High Street as well from a short time ago, and you can see just how the sky is completely orange as the smoke is being lit by the flames underneath, the cinders rising in the air, showing the fuel that is being used by the fire at this time, and a lot of the wood from the market stalls and the wooden areas, the wooden structural parts of the older buildings going up in cinders, adding that, but also with some of the lighter parts of that smoke indicating at that point the amount of water that was being poured on that by the fire brigade. And you can see from this live shot now how the firefighters still working on that. You see the fire still there. It's been reduced significantly in all of this, but the fire still is there. And Sarah Merchant, our reporter on the ground there, and it would seem after all this time, I mean, a good 3 hours into this, Sarah, still the bits of fire that remain still seem to be burning fairly ferociously still.
Yeah, and they are throwing jets of water down onto the fire to bring it under control. They will be here all night trying to get this situation sorted out. Certainly, even when the flames are out, they'll have to damp down for much of the night. And then, of course, the investigation into how it started and an assessment of how much damage it's caused will begin in earnest tomorrow. I've just seen a Network rail van turn up. When I was around the other side, I'm in Camden High Street now, but I initially was by the canal, and it looked like much of the overland railway station was on fire, and certainly seeing the Network rail van turning up with engineers looks like that does confirm that. They've probably come to see if they can inspect how much damage has been done to the track there. I imagine it will cause an awful lot of problems for commuters who are trying to get into central London on Monday morning. Tomorrow, of course, is the big shopping day at Camden Market. That, of course, will be disrupted as people will be all over the scene trying to see how badly damaged it is, see what can be salvaged, and see what might have started this fire. There's still an awful lot of people on the streets, people still wandering around trying to get a glimpse. Because it's so fine and it's so dry, people aren't in a hurry to leave, even though actually from where we're standing here on Camden High Street, there isn't an awful lot to see anymore. Certainly, it's very black. The sky's very black, so you can barely make out any smoke. The flames that were leaping above the three-storey buildings have totally died down from where I'm standing. When I first arrived, the whole sky was orange. There were sparks flying out, and I could see the fire rapidly spreading. But that's certainly not the picture now. There are 100 firefighters here, and they do seem to have brought most of the fire under control. There are still pockets that are burning furiously, but it doesn't look like the major worry that it was several hours ago when police were trying to quickly cordon off the scene. They spread their cordon very wide around the area because they were worried about the speed of that fire spreading. They're also worried about the nature of the crowd here. There's a lot of young people. Camden is a popular spot for bars and nightclubs. It's busy every weekend. People coming across London, across the country for this sort of unique environment that Camden offers, and people have been drinking all night. They've been making it difficult for the police. There's probably as many police here as there are firefighters, just trying to make sure that people don't get too close. And it seems like from reports earlier from the fire service that nobody was trapped inside those buildings. It does seem that even though the fire has caused extensive damage to the buildings there, it doesn't look like anybody's been hurt.
OK, Sarah, for the time being.
Camden, joining us, fire investigator and former London Fire Brigade officer David Townsend. David, welcome back again. Clearly a lot of work going on now this morning as they both investigate the cause of the fire and establish the damage done. And we were being told structural engineers looking at some of these buildings because of the intensity of that blaze. Yes, well, the whole task has to be performed under a safe environment.
and it will be a task performed by multiple agencies, not just the fire. The police and other agencies will have an interest in this fire.
I guess the first thing, though, is to make sure the fire itself is fully out, the so-called damping down, to ensure it doesn't erupt again, and that's when the structural engineers can move in when they know that the fire is out.
Yes, that's the first priority, and in itself it wouldn't threaten too much of the evidence left there. The evidence preservation is very much a priority in first-hand firefighting these days. The awareness of firefighters is very good now.
And they seem to have done a very good job of containing it overnight, even though we can see that there still appears to be sort of fire there and smoke and steam. This was a little earlier this morning, about an hour ago. It really was very intense. What, flames of 30 feet higher or more?
Yeah, it's very intense, and it's quite a dense, as well as being a dense area, populated area, it's also dense in terms of buildings and the contents of those buildings.
And that's the difficulty.
It is difficult. Access is always difficult in urban areas.
And there are some warehouses there, we're told, as well, and that's, I guess, another problem. You don't know what's in there in terms of what chemicals, gas cylinders and so on.
No, that would have been established well into the night last night by contacting the occupiers of those buildings in order the firefighters can conduct their tasks safely.
And we're just looking at the pressure that's being applied by that hose. These are the live pictures coming through. I mean, that in itself does an awful lot of damage, just the amount of water that's being put into these buildings.
Yes, it's essential to get that amount of throw because at this stage, of course, the firefighting is done from a distance. But also a local authority would have assisted in the early stages here in boosting the water supplies for this area.
Yeah. Now, we're told up to 4 days before they reopen the area once they've established the buildings are safe. But how long does it take for you to establish the cause of the fire, to get in and look at the various seats of the fire?
There's no period of time for an investigation. It will take as long as it takes, and obviously getting to the scene of the fire, to the seat of the fire, is a considerable time. But the investigation goes way beyond that. We're looking at not just the cause of the fire, but the reason for the spread of fire. So this is why many other agencies are involved.
Has it started in more than one place, for instance?
More than one place, of course, is the initial indication for indication of any deliberate act. But its interest here is the reason from spread from one building to another. And that gives implication perhaps for the initial fire risk assessment of the building under the new legislation, where there's a consideration should be taken of the risks surrounding buildings nowadays.
Yeah, but thankfully, and perhaps due to the work of the fire brigade overnight, no injuries or casualties.
Well, that's always to be grateful for, and that's all down to initial planning, pre-planning, and actions of first attending emergency services.
Indeed, and we're very thankful for that as well. But thank you for your expert analysis, of course, and we'll see what unwraps with the fire investigation this morning. Thank you very much indeed.